Hi everyone, welcome to another oil pastels class. Today we'll be working with a photo reference, and this is the photo. Please have ready your supplies, so you need paper, pencil, your oil pastels, and paper towel to clean off any excess, and maybe an eraser. So we're going to start off by sketching the basic shapes in our photograph. So right now I draw the horizon line first, and then I'm going in to the mountains and just really roughly blocking out where I want the edges to be. And one important thing to note is look for the shadows. So look for the shadows. You see in the picture, there's some of these darker blue spots. I am sketching all of that out right now. Once you're done that, we're going to sketch the trees that are in the distance. So notice how I'm working from the background to the middle and then to the front. So draw the stuff in the back first. Oops, that might have been a little too high. So I'm making it a little bit lower. Once again, very rough shapes. Not too many details. And then there's also a row of trees that are coming in from the top left into the middle. And I'm sketching the tops of the trees. Look for that angle going down from the top left. It's quite a steep drop. And then now draw the trunks. So sketch down where you want the tree trunks to be. And yeah, that's the angle you want to be looking for. So it's going down ever so slightly. So sketch out the trunks. I am also sketching out the canopies of the trees. So the little clusters of leaves from the different trees. I'm sketching out that tree top as well. So there are smaller shapes within the bigger shape. Now we can move on to the foreground. So the plains that we see, the grass. There are a couple little bushes here and there, so sketch those in. And here I'm just going back because I feel that the trees might need a little bit more volume. And after this, your sketch is done. So let's move on to the oil pastels. We're going to start off with the sky. So we're going to need blue and then later white. But first start filling in the sky with some blue. And you just want to shade it about medium pressure, not too dark. And keep going all the way down to the edge of the mountain. For the second row, I'm going a little bit lighter with my blue because in the photo you can see that the sky gets lighter at the bottom. And at this point, don't forget to outline the shape of the cloud. And you're going to take a white and fill in the clouds. So we're blocking in the clouds. We do this so that the colors don't get muddled later on. and then fill in the rest of the sky. So if your pastel is broken like mine, you can just take it on its side and scrub down. Take your white again, and we're going to start blending out the pores. So the pores are these holes in the color. And with the white, press really firmly. So press hard and start blending. I like to take my white pastel and go in kind of a circular motion. So circle, 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 circle. And that way I get an even blend of colors. But for today, you might also want to try having some texture, leaving some texture in the sky. And you'll see what I mean in a second. And just keep blending. So at this point, I feel that the clouds might need a little bit more outline. So take your blue again and just outline the edge of that cloud. And then blend it out with the white. For the texture, if you want to try this, you can take the blue again and swipe up. Do a swiping motion. And there's some texture in those strokes because the paper is uneven. And you can do this for all of the sky. And I'm going to keep this texture today because I think it looks quite nice. And later when we have the trees and the field, it'll create some harmony with the similar textures. And you can blend it out a little bit, but some of that texture will still be there. So now we're going to start painting in the mountains. So get a couple of colors. You're going to need peach, blue, and white. So these are the three colors I'm going to start with. The orange is to tone down the blue in the mountain because the mountain is so far away. In the picture it looks very gray. And that's how we're going to get gray, is by mixing orange and blue and a little bit of white. I did take out yellow here, but you really don't need it until the grass part. So let's get started. I like to begin by blocking in the shadows first. So from the top left, I'm looking at the photo and I'm looking for those little creases. So in the shadows, that little gray-blue color. And following our sketch, you can start to really fill in those empty areas with the blue. Alright, and now you're going to take your peach color and start blending the blues with it. The peach has some yellow tones, so when we add it to the blue, you get a nice and dull, kind of like a gray-green or a grayish blue, to create the effect that the mountain is not really there, but it's kind of faded away because of the clouds and the fog. Now that the shadows are finished, we're going to do the midtones. So everywhere else on the mountain, take your white pastel and fill in the rest of the mountain. This is so we can create a lighter gray-green, similar to that of the shadows. After you're done filling all of these little empty areas with white, take your blue and sweep. This is called side stroke, by the way. Side stroke some blue into those middle areas. You're going to leave some of those pores in the middle and build up the color. So right on top of the white you just added, take some of the blue and add some of it. Now grab your lime green, so the lighter green, and do the same thing and side sweep it or side stroke it across the middle areas. So now we're getting a bluish green, and fill in all of those areas. And for the next step, you're going to take your peach and start blending out the colors, but I actually went back in with more blue to make the green less yellow. So we want kind of a bluish green, more on the blue side, because the mountain is so far away. And if we add more blue, it feels further away because it's cooler. Now I will add the peach tones and just blend out the middle, or the midtones in the mountain. So going around the shadows, take the peach color and start blending everything. It'll look a bit weird at first, but after a while you'll see that the colors harmonize with each other. Alright, and I'm going to take some blue again and just add some of those shadows back on the left side because I feel it's a little too orange. So take some blue and just scrub right on top of that. Darken the shadows as well, so I'm adding a little bit more blue in those crevices, in those cracks. And by now the oil pastel is really thick on this mountain, so there's a thick layer of oil pastels. Any color you add now won't be as strong as if you had just put it on the paper. So there's a thick layer of oil pastels, which is nice, so the color changes gradually. Anyways, take your blue and just keep redefining those shadow areas. And then I take some white to just blend out those pores. So I'm talking about those little holes that are kind of like gaps in the mountain. And you can take any color. I'm just using white. You can also take a peach color and blend out the pores, but any light color will work. So the reason why we're using peach as a blending color is because this photograph feels very warm. So now you're going to get your dark green, and we're going to start filling in the trees in the mid-ground over there. So just at the foot of the mountain right there, start blocking in the greens for the trees. So the complementary color of green is red, and I want to tone down the green a little bit because it feels too artificial. So taking your red, you can start blending the greens just a little bit because red is really powerful as a color. And you don't want to press too hard or else it looks like Christmas. Just go over where you've already added the green. So now we're making the green a little bit darker. And I'm going to use the same peach pastel and blend the colors together. So we're going to go back or come back later and darken those trees, but for now, let's do the grass in the front. So take your yellow, because that is the lightest color that you can find in the field, and just scrub it on its side and fill out the biggest area in the foreground of your landscape. And you can leave some of those holes because we will come back and blend these holes out as well. And I'm also taking the pastel on its side horizontally and scrubbing it along the grooves in the field. If you can see this in the photo, it looks like a field or farm, so there are these lines going across. So now I've taken a lime green, so right now in my hand that is a lime green, and I'm adding more green tones to the field. And I'm scrubbing up and down from left to right, or right to left. For the field in the distance, you can take a blue pastel and do the same scribing motion up and down to make it seem that the field is getting cooler and cooler as it gets further away. And down here in the foreground, you can see I'm making some rough lines to show that there are ridges in the field. Grass is kind of crazy, so you can take any kind of random color and just experiment with how it would look like in a field. So I took some red because it is the complementary of green, and I'm deepening those shadow areas and holding on its side horizontally and just scrubbing it lightly across and then blending it out. with some of that dark green. So up at the top you can see all the colors that I'm using. You can't really see it because it's covered by the picture, but I have red, yellow, blue, green, white, lime green, and pastel peach. So right now it's kind of hard to explain, but I'm going in with a lot of different colors to make the field less artificial. And here I go again with the peach. So take your peach and start blending out the colors. In the lower half of the field, I am now switching the motion that I blend with. So before I was left and right across, but now I'm going kind of diagonally, so sideways. This way it mimics the feel of grass blowing in the wind. Just a directional thing. So now let's blend those pores away. So take your yellow pastel and at the very bottom of your landscape, start scrubbing away and blending those pores. And if you want to keep them, by all means, you don't have to do this step. Now take your lime green, so the light green, and do the same thing, but starting from the middle and then going up. So at the very bottom it's yellow, and then in the middle area it's more green, and then in the back it's kind of like a bluish, reddish, muted color. I'm also going back with my red pastel and holding it on its side and doing some tiny scratches here and there to show the texture of the grass in the field. Let's move back to the top of the field. I am using a blue, so that is blue in my hand, and I'm using it to darken the field in the background, so closer to the mountain. I'm also darkening where the trees are going to be. So blue is great for developing shadows. And now I'm going to use the forbidden color, black. So take your black pastel, or brown. I tried it, but it wasn't as dark as I wanted it to be. So take your black and notice how the trees in the photo are much darker than the mountain itself. And in my drawing right now, it looks like the same. So I'm using the black and darkening those trees. So there's more contrast between the front and the back, and they don't totally blend into each other. So use black and make those trees stand out a little bit more. Now you can use any color to blend the black lines, but I've decided to go in with a lime green. And for me, I feel that it is still not dark enough, so I'm taking the black pastel and making things even darker. There are also a couple of bushes in the field, so you can take the black and add those shadows that are appearing in the field, kind of like lint. Okay, and on to the next step. Let's leave the grass alone now. We're going to work on the trees. So the first color that we're going to use is yellow. And holding it on its side, or however you want to hold it, fill in those tree areas with some yellow and leave a little bit of that texture in, because there are leaves and the leaves have a lot of texture. So I'm not pushing really hard, but I'm not going too lightly either. So with the yellow, roughly shade in where the trees are going to be. For the shadows of the trees, take your blue and do the same thing and shade the bottom, mostly the bottom. You can also go into the midtones, so the yellow isn't too yellow, but we're slowly turning it into green because blue and yellow makes green. And once again, I am defining where these individual treetops are. So that's one treetop, and there's a few smaller ones as we get to the bottom. So I really like how those two trees in the middle, there's one that's in front and the other one has a lot of shadows. So that contrast is very nice to look at and I want to keep it in. Now on the left side here, I'm taking a black pastel and outlining the trunk. At the same time, I'm also adding the shadows into the tree leaves. And the shadows are darker on the left side, so you can take your black and make the left line of the trunks a bit darker than the one on the right. And then now I'm going to darken that inner part of the tree over there. If you can see it, it's kind of like a mushroom. And I'm just going to take the black and darken some of these areas before we blend everything together. When you're shading these trees, think of shading a sphere or a ball. When the light source is at the top left, the shadow kind of wraps around the ball and takes up a little bit of space at the bottom left corner. So on the opposite side, it's kind of like you're sketching or drawing with a graphite pencil. And when you're ready, you're going to take your pastel peach, so the peachy, orangey, whatever color, and use that to blend the black and the yellows together. And you want to fill out the pores as well. So press firmly now, blend everything together. You can also take some green or lime green, any green, and add some of it into the trees to make the colors a little bit more different. Because if they were all the same tone, it looks flat and boring. And then I'll take the yellow and blend the pores again. So I like to use yellow for blending the brightest areas because of the warm lighting. You can also take some dark green and add that really vibrant green into that tree over there. So in the photo you can see the tree on the very left, the largest tree, the biggest one, it's kind of more yellow than the other trees. So the tree in the corner is more yellow and the trees in the middle are more green. To make the shadows more interesting, you can take a blue and add some of that into the shadows. So I'm using the side of the pastel and just adding a little bit of blue in the shaded areas. Back to the black, I'm going to darken those shadows again because looking back at the reference, I feel that there needs to be more contrast. And contrast is just the difference between the values in your drawing. So take the black and really kind of push those shadows. Make them really different from the rest of the tree. Alright, so now this is kind of an extra step. If you have a sharp knife or a ruler with a sharp edge, or even a card, or an empty pencil, you're going to take that sharp edge and scrape away some of the pastels, because we're going to start working on the tree trunks. In the photo, the tree trunks are kind of this orange color, and you can try to scrape some of the oil pastel off, but mine's not coming off very well. But you can try and see if yours will come off. Alright, and take your peach color and just fill in all of those trunks. So you want to press firmly and get the color in there. Next, you're going to get your orange. If you don't have an orange, red and yellow will make orange. Take your orange and go along the far left edge of the tree. So now we're bringing out the color a little bit more. So the branches and the trunks don't look too boring. So add some color back into those tree trunks. And now I'm feeling that the trees are not really there yet, so I'm going to go back with the black and darken the trunks, especially in the shadow areas, below the leaves and on the left. So those are where the shadows are. Below the leaves, they're super dark, and then on the left because of the light source. And we are almost done, so the last step is we're going to add those shadows for the trees. So the sunlight is coming in from the right. The image does not feel right if we don't have the trees' shadows on the field. So take your black or any dark color, you can experiment, but I'll just use black for now. And add some of those shadows in the background, behind the trees. You can be careful avoiding the trunks, but honestly, it doesn't really matter. And then now take your blue. So it was black first, and then blue. Right now it is blue. I'm using the blue to blend out the colors, or the shadow. If the shadows are too harsh for you, you can take some yellow and kind of fade out the edge between the blue shadow and the rest of the field, just to make it a little bit softer. The final step is to add the tiny details. So the bushes in the field, I feel, are the small details. I'm taking a blue crayon and showing or marking where I want those bushes to be. And then take the black and add that shadow at the very bottom. We're going to come back and blend that out in just a second, but blue and then black for the little bushes in the field. And I feel that the trees are a little bit too short and doesn't really make sense. So I took some black and added the trunks. So the trees, I made them a little bit taller in the midground over there. And to soften those little edges, kind of hairs, can take a blue and scrub across the top to blur out the black lines so it's not too obvious, but rather kind of suggested that it's there. And we are done. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you again next week.